So today we're just going to answer a few generic FAQs that we get asked quite regularly by people that are using the coatings mainly. So we're going to run through those. So FAQ number one is, can our coatings be applied outside? Yes, they can. Obviously, as with anything like this, there's still some parameters you've got to stick to. Firstly, the temperatures have got to be above 5 degrees C. You need to make sure that there's not strong winds and it's not raining for obvious reasons, and direct sunlight needs to be avoided. But as far as the curing process, once it's been applied, you need to leave it 2 to 4 hours, ideally 4 hours before rain hits, and then the outdoor temperature needs to stay above that 5 degrees for at least the first 12 hours. FAQ number two is, how do different temperatures affect the coating? When it's too hot, what you'll find is the coating will almost go tacky on the surface as you're putting it on, just because it's just far too hot for the coating to even do what it needs to do on the surface. If it's too cold, it won't bond properly because it hasn't got any heat there to help create the bond. So whilst we've got quite a vast temperature range from sort of plus 5 degrees up to sort of plus 30, even 35 degrees, you need to consider the fact that if you go too cold or too hot, the bond just won't happen, or application will be difficult. FAQ number three is about hardness levels. So hardness levels, as far as we're concerned, is a marketing nonsense in essence. Everyone asks, is the coating 9H, 10H, fucking 50H, whatever people want to see. The way we like to describe hardness is it's all relative to the surface the coat is being applied to. What you have to consider with hardness and with coatings is the fact that when you're applying a coating to the vehicle paintwork, as an example, under a microscope, the paintwork's quite almost sort of undulations in it, sort of peaks and troughs. When you put the coating over the top, it's not thick enough to create a full-blown layer over the top of that paintwork. So what it does is it mimics the lines in the paint. So in essence, you're creating protection on the paint, but you're not creating a full-blown layer. And then what happens is, when you test in the hardness side of things, if that was a soft paint already, because of how thin the coatings are, you're only going to mimic what the paint was already achieving. Now, admittedly, you may increase it slightly, but if you had a soft paint at the factory, let's say a 2 or a 3H, by putting the coating on, you're not automatically going to go up to a 9H. The best way we like to explain this to people is, if you took a very thin piece of ice and it was on a pavement, as an example, it's quite difficult to break through. It's very solid on that pavement because the pavement underneath is a very solid surface. You get that same thin sheet of ice and you put it on water, as an example, you can literally do that and it will break and crack instantly because the underlying surface is very soft. FAQ number four is about layering the coating and if there's any benefits. With our graphene range, especially the Graphonics range of coatings that we do, on darker paints, what you'll find is by layering, you will get an increased depth of colour and more gloss. You will also get this on the normal ceramics, but with the graphene especially, it will aid that ability to enhance the depth of colour, enhance the gloss. As far as durability is concerned, there's an argument to say that by applying it twice, you're limiting any possibility of missing areas. But in terms of durability, it's not like you put a layer on, add another layer, and it doubles up the thickness of the coating. That's not how it works. The way the coating works, it has almost thousands and thousands of tiny little, let's call them tadpoles for now, that go into the paint and bond to the paint surface. And together they form a coating, but that's also why the coating is flexible, because it's not one layer, they're tiny individuals that come together as a whole, so therefore it becomes flexible, it stays flexible. Since layering up the coating, there are some benefits, but as far as durability is concerned, you're not going to double the durability by putting 2 layers on, but aesthetically speaking, yes, there are benefits to layering it. FAQ number 5, we get asked this quite a lot, is the difference between the slick coatings and the standard coatings. It is pretty much what it says on the tin. The standard coatings, they leave the paint feeling, it's smooth, but it's not a slick finish, and it's more of a natural feel like the paint would feel after it'd been polished. Whereas the slick coatings, they will leave a very slick finish. Reason we've got both is originally when we started doing ceramic coatings 10 years ago, we didn't have a way to create a slick finish without putting something like a ceramic spray over the top of it. More recently, we developed a way of creating a slick finish just with one coating application. And that's why we've got both. It gives the user the choice for either having a sort of paintwork that is very similar to the natural paint feel, or a lot of people like to go up to the paintwork and feel it and feel that something's on it. So that slick finish gives that. FAQ is around the curing process, which we've sort of touched on a little bit anyway. But basically how the coating cures is through moisture in the air. So in certain countries, there can be too much moisture in the air. Let's take somewhere like Singapore, somewhere like that, where it's got very high humidity. And in other countries, there's hardly any humidity. Now that's dangerous on both levels. So if you've got too little humidity, you haven't got enough moisture in the air to help the coating cure. If you've got too much humidity, then you've got too much moisture in the air to let the coating cure. Because of what we use in the coatings, which is a polyxylazine base, it doesn't, as much as you can use it after 2 to 4 hours of applying the coating, we always recommend you don't wash for the first 7 days. Reason for that is the way it cures is it cures from the bottom up, and it will take days and days and days to get to a fully cured state. So if you're then washing using a wash mitt or whatever it might be on the surface, that coating isn't cured enough to receive the wash mitt over the surface, and it may impact the bond the coating's got with the paint. So what we recommend is obviously 7 days before you wash the vehicle, and actually in some cases, if it's winter and the temperature is sort of 5 to 10 degrees, you may be curing steel for 2 to 3 weeks. But that being said, it doesn't affect the ability of the coating to work like it should do, as long as you follow the right steps for application and not washing the vehicle for the first 7 days.